Владимир Владимирович Путин и президент Соединенных Штатов Америки Джордж Буш. President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Putin and President of the United States of America George Bush. Подписывается договор между Российской Федерацией и Соединенными Штатами Америки о сокращении стратегических наступательных потенциалов. Treaty between the Russian Federation and the United States of America on strategic offensive reductions is being signed. Подписывается совместная декларация президента Владимира Владимировича Путина и президента Джорджа Буша о новых стратегических отношениях между Российской Федерацией и Соединенными Штатами Америки. Joint declaration by President Vladimir Putin and by President George Bush on the new strategic relationship between the Russian Federation and the United States of America is being signed. По итогам переговоров приняты следующие совместные заявления президента Российской Федерации Владимира Владимировича Путина и президента Соединенных Штатов Америки Джорджа Буша о развитии российско-американских экономических связей, о новом российско-американском энергетическом диалоге, о антитеррористическом сотрудничестве, о контактах между людьми, о ситуации на Ближнем Востоке. As a result of the negotiations, the following joint statements by President Vladimir Putin and by President George Bush are adopted. On new Russian-American energy dialogue, on counter-terrorism cooperation, on Russian-US people-to-people contacts, on the situation in the Middle East.
President, thank you very much. Laura and I are so grateful for your hospitality and your friendship. It's an historic and hopeful day for Russia and America. It's an historic day for the world as well. President Putin and I today ended a long chapter of confrontation and opened up an entirely new relationship between our countries. Mr. President, I appreciate your leadership. I appreciate your vision. I appreciate the fact that we've now laid the foundation for not only our governments, but future governments to work in a spirit of cooperation and a spirit of trust. That's good. It's good for the people of Russia. It's good for the people of the United States. President Putin and I have signed a treaty that will substantially reduce our strategic nuclear warhead arsenals to the range of 1,700 to 2,200. The lowest level in decades. Liquidates the Cold War legacy of nuclear hostility between our countries. We've also signed a joint declaration on a new strategic relationship that charts a course toward greater security, political and economic cooperation between Russia and the United States. Our nations will continue to cooperate closely in the war against global terror. I understand full well that the people of Russia have suffered at the hands of terrorists, and so have we. And I want to thank President Putin for his understanding of the nature of the new war we face together, and his willingness to be determined and steadfast and patient as we pursue this war together. President Putin and I agree also that the greatest danger in this war is the prospect of terrorists acquiring weapons of mass destruction. Our nations must spare no effort at preventing all forms of proliferation. And we discussed Iran in this context today. We'll work closely with each other on this very important issue. Our nations also agree on the importance of the new NATO-Russia Council that will be launched in a few days in Rome. And Mr. President, this council is also a tribute to your leadership and your vision. For decades, Russia and NATO were adversaries. Those days are gone. And that's good. And that's good for the Russian people. It's good for the people of my country. It's good for the people of Europe. It's good for the people of the world. Russia and the United States are also determined to work closely on important regional challenges. Together we will work to rebuild Afghanistan. Together we will work to improve security in Georgia. We will work to help end fighting and achieve a political settlement in Chechnya. Russia and the United States are committed to economic cooperation. We have launched a major new energy partnership. Private firms will take the lead in developing and transforming the vast energy reserves of Russia and the Caspian world to markets through multiple pipelines such as the Caspian Pipeline Consortium and Baku-Jehan. And I want to thank you for the cooperation and the willingness to work together on energy and energy security. Russia is building its market economy, opening new opportunities for both our countries. I'm impressed by the level of entrepreneurial growth here in Russia. It's a significant achievement. It's a testimony to the leadership of Vladimir Putin. In a while, we're going to meet with Russian and American business leaders to discuss how we can continue fostering good relations and fostering opportunity. We want Russia to be a part of the world economy. We look forward to one day welcoming Russia as a member of the World Trade Organization. President Putin and I also agree that we'll work to resolve disputed areas of trading, such as poultry or steel, in a spirit of mutual respect and trust. America welcomes the dramatic improvement in freedoms in Russia since Soviet days, including the new freedoms of Russia's Jewish community. In recognition of these freedoms, I am determined to work with Congress to remove Russia from the Jackson-Vanik Amendment. It is time our Congress responded to my request, President Putin's desire, that the Jackson-Vanik Amendment be removed pertaining to Russia. I also discussed with President Putin the important role of free press in building a working democracy. Today, we will meet with media entrepreneurs from both countries. It's an issue we discussed before. The President said it makes sense to have a forum where media entrepreneurs can meet and visit. It's going to take place today. Mr. President, I appreciate that. I am pleased with our relationship. I am confident that by working together, we make the world more peaceful. I'm confident that by working together, we can win the first war of the 21st century, and that is the war cold-blooded killers, against cold-blooded killers who want to harm nations such as America and Russia. And I'm confident that if we work together in the spirit of cooperation on all fronts, both our peoples will benefit. Mr. President, thank you for your hospitality.
Distinguished American colleagues, distinguished Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, we've just accomplished the official part of our talks with the U.S. President George Bush. Before our distinguished colleagues, the visit in Moscow and St. Petersburg, but now we can name the major result of our talks. First of all, the logical development and practical implementation are seen by our agreements reached in Crawford last year. I mean the signature of the treaty between Russia on strategic offensive reductions and, first of all, this document. It's the statement of our countries to reduce our nuclear arsenals and joint work for non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. It's the decision of two states which are particularly responsible for international security and strategic stability. We are on the level of adopting the declaration on new strategic relationship, which determines the basic directions in security and international policy. We have a positive impact for economic cooperation and development of our relations between the institutions of general public, and together with Mr. President, we discussed especially this aspect, the civil society, and between the people of our countries. The declaration formulates the principles of our dialogue in anti-missile dialogue, that is, the transparency and openness, exclusion of potential threats. We confirmed the general agreement on offensive and defensive systems in all their aspects. A separate issue, the mechanism of NATO-Russia cooperation within the framework of 20. It presumes a new level of joint responsibility and confidence between all its participants. I would like to stress especially that is the international novelty, and it happened because of the strengthening of Russian-American relations, including in joint confrontation to international terrorists, struggling with international terrorism. Russians were together with the American people in September days, and we are grateful for sincere feelings of compassion transmitted by President Bush on behalf of American people, because of the recent events in Caspisk. The memory of terrorism victims and the responsibility for the security of our people means joint struggle against this evil, as well as the struggle against Nazism. The spirit of our cooperation will mean fruitful results even today. That's why the agenda has very concrete issues of interaction against terrorism on the basis of unique standards against any manifestation of terrorism and extremism. We need close contacts through all agencies and services, including special services. Here we have very positive experience we've accrued over the past years, and we see it today, we feel it today during the negotiations. The bilateral working group on Afghanistan have demonstrated its efficiency, and will, Mr. President, would like to transform it on a group to combat terrorism, especially chemical, biological, nuclear terrorism. Russia and the United States are oriented to build new relations in economic activity. Our businessman mentality is much alike. That's their qualities, and their joint work is based on free trade and supporting the initiatives. That's why our task is to open new opportunities for business community. We need to avoid obstacles of the past. Here we mean not only the market status of the Russian economy, and I'm grateful to Mr. President that he has given a very positive signal during our talks, and it doesn't also mean the such things as Jackson-Vanik Amendment. We have to remove administrative obstacles which encourage both countries to cooperate, especially in the high-tech sphere, which determine the economy of the 21st century. That is the aeronautics, telecommunications, science and technologies, new sources of energy. I would like to focus on energy, especially nuclear energy. We paid much attention to it today. And the large format of our cooperation will be a great element for the global economy on the whole. I would like to stress in conclusion that, of course, not all ideas, not all initiatives are on paper and in the form of official documents, but a serious move forward in all these issues is quite evident for us. Today we together counteract to global threats and challenges, and we are going to form a stable world order that is within the interests of our peoples and our countries, and I think it's in the interest of all the civilized human society. Thank you.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please ask at least no more than 2 questions, and name your agency and yourselves, please.
Name your agency.
Favors. I have a question for both presidents, please. If we've truly entered a new era, why do you each need 1,700 nuclear weapons? President Putin, why does Russia need to continue producing nuclear warheads? President Bush, why does the United States need to keep some 2,000 of these weapons in storage, ready for deployment?
Yeah. First of all, remember where we've come from. We've come from 6,000 to 1,700 very quick, or to 1,700 to 2,200 very quick period of time. Friends really don't need weapons pointing at each other. We both understand that. But it's a realistic assessment of where we've been. And who knows what will happen 10 years from now? Who knows what future presidents will say and how they react. If you have a nuclear arsenal, you want to make sure they work. So one reason is that you keep weapons in storage apart from launchers is for quality control. And the thing I think it's important for you to know, Ron, is that we've made tremendous progress from the past. And the treaty is setting a period of time in the rearview mirror of both countries. And I am not only confident that this is good for world peace, I am confident this sets the stage for incredible cooperation that we've never had before between our countries.
I concur with the assessment given by my colleague, Mr. Bush, and naturally, and our position is well known, we are guided by the fact that it's more worthwhile, perhaps, to eliminate a certain part of nuclear potentials. At the same time, I'd like to point out another thing here. Any man who has at least once in his career dealt with arms, had the arms in his hands, at least a hunter's rifle or whatever, he knows that it's much better, much safer to see to it, to have it in stock, disarmed, disassembled perhaps, rather than to have it in your arms and charged with bullets in it, and with your finger on the trigger at the same time. This is a different state of affairs, as it were, and the fact that we agreed with President Bush regarding such a detente in such manner, this is a serious move ahead to ensure international security, which is a very good sign as regards the relationship between our two countries. Now, as to why Russia should continue to produce nuclear arms, I'd like to say that this is not our priority. But in addition to Russia and US, out there are other states who possess nuclear arms. What is more concerning, there are countries who want to acquire weapons of mass destruction. Experts in the area of international security are aware of the fact, and they've been talking a lot about nuclear arms as deterrent. Moreover, many of them assert, and it's difficult to dispute this fact, they said that the existence of the nuclear arms was an impediment, an obstacle, which contained the world from large-scale wars over the past decades, let's say. And I think we should take that into consideration while building a new quality of relationship within the two main nuclear states of the world. We also should pay attention to the whole set of relations currently in the world out there, and we should take into account the prospects of development of the world in the realm of security, bearing in mind those potential threats I've mentioned here. Ilya Kulikov, ORT television. Mr. Bush, when can we hope that Jackson Vanik will be rescinded, which currently is very out of place? That's you know, a remnant of the Cold War here, and will the U.S. continue to use it as a leverage of applying pressure on Russia? And when Russia will finally be recognized as a marketplace country? And what's the prospect of Russia's accession to WTO? And now to Mr. Putin, Russian President. What's your idea of how U.S. Boeings can help Russian civil aviation?
I can make myself more plain during my opening statement about how I feel about Jackson Vanik. It requires action by the Congress of the United States, and I hope they act. The market-based economy is an issue that the President and I talked about. It is a regulatory matter, the responsibility of which resides at the Commerce Department. The Secretary of it and I have talked about this subject. We'll have an answer to the President soon. And in terms of success of Russia's entry to the WTO is something that is we want. It's in our nation's interest that Russia be part of the WTO, and we look forward to working with the President and respective ministers to see that that happens. It's in our interest that that happens. And so it's hard for me to predict the timetables on all the issues you mentioned. Those over which I have got direct control will happen relatively quickly.
Well, you know, while talking about the whole set of commercial and trade ties between our two countries, today we've mentioned more than once that we are facing somewhat an unusual situation in this area today, which has to do with the fact that while improving relations in disarmament matters, building confidence, and so on and so forth. At the same time, we are expanding the whole set of relations in economy area, and naturally we'll face new problems we never had to do with and to deal with before. The position taken by the U.S. administration and the President is known to us as regards Jackson Vanik. It's precisely the administration who initiated its rescinding. And business communities of our two countries, American and Russian business communities, and their interaction, together with the interaction of the parliamentary issues, will be able to remove similar problems in automatic manner, I guess. Now, as regards your specific question on purchase of Boeings, I must say that the best lobbyist of the interests of U.S. companies will be American president standing here, since both Boeings and poultry and other matters, very often I've been told by my colleagues, who will usually say, well, it's not on our level, but I must say. And then there will be a lengthy monologue on specific matters. Anyhow, you've posed a very acute and very specific question. Why it's acute? Because it's on the agenda, or practical interaction. And it's very specific, since it has a bearing to very specific matters. And since it's acute and specific, I'll answer, as one should in gentleman's society, in a very general manner. First and foremost, our carriers, in my opinion, should be primarily guided towards Russian aircraft producers. Why? Because Russian manufacturers, don't have anywhere to sell their products, otherwise, because they are not let anywhere, or with a lot of difficulty. They only can sell it domestically. That's the first thing. And here we can talk about interaction on the market. Now, the second thing, our carriers, primarily Aeroflot, should be competitive on the market and should have advanced technology in their hands. Therefore, they both have American Boeings today. They also have European Airbus aircraft. And the question has been raised currently on additional purchase, on replacement of old equipment with those foreign aircraft. Now, I should say, depending on the decision to be taken by economic structures, this is not a political question, mind you. The economic structure should decide on it. A lot will depend on it in the regards of the state of our political interaction, of course. And our American colleagues' proposal today is a little bit costlier than the Europeans' proposal. Had Americans bought our cheap aluminium and steel, then their aircraft would have been cheaper and more competitive, including on our market. So all of this jointly has been a subject of our discussions with the President here and our good friend and partner, Secretary of Commerce and Economy. And I think that in the course of normalization of trade and commerce relations, all these issues will be addressed in a most mutually advantageous manner.
Okay. John King, I'd like to ask each of you about this issue of Iran and proliferation. President Bush, your State Department calls Iran the world's single biggest state sponsor of terrorism. I wonder, because of that, if these Russian sales that you object to continue, does this new strategic relationship you're discussing today bump up against what you outlined in your speech to Congress when you said in the war against terrorism, you're either with the United States or against the United States? And President Putin, the Bush team says that your sales of nuclear technology and sophisticated military technology to Iran are the world's single biggest proliferation problem right now. Do you agree with that assessment? And did you make any specific promises today to meet with President Bush?
Well, first, we spent a lot of time on this subject, and as I said yesterday in Germany, I worry about Iran, and I'm confident Vladimir Putin worries about Iran, and that was confirmed today. He understands terrorist threats, just like We understand terrorist threats. And he understands that weapons of mass destruction are dangerous to Russia just as they are to America. And he explained that for himself, of course, now they stand. But we spoke very frankly and honestly about the need to make sure that a non-transparent government run by radical clerics doesn't get their hands on weapons of mass destruction. It can be harmful to us and harmful to Russia. And the President can speak for himself. And he has gave me some assurances that I think will be very comforting for you to listen to. And I'm confident we can work together on this issue. This is in both our countries' mutual interest that we solve this problem.
I will confirm what Mr. Bush has just said, and I agree with your evaluation of threats in this regard. Generally speaking, I believe that the problem of non-proliferation is one of the key problems as regards ensuring international security. Incidentally, this happened to be one of the main motivating and underpinning logical stimuluses to work in Russia-NATO framework together on non-proliferation on nuclear arms. At the same time, I'd like to point out that cooperation between Iran and Russia is not of a character which would undermine the process of non-proliferation. Our cooperation is exclusively, as regards energy sector, focused on the problems of economic nature. I'd like to point out also that the U.S. has taken a commitment upon themselves to build a similar nuclear power plant in North Korea, similar to Ashur. And in addition to Iran, I think we also need to think about other countries here. For example, we have some questions concerning development of missile programs in Taiwan, in some other countries, where we've been witnessing active work of producing mass destruction weapons and their carriers. All of that should be a subject of our in-depth discussion, both bilaterally and in the frameworks of NATO-Russia agreement. That's one of the key issues of the modern times, I believe. It would seem to me that in order to be efficient in this sense, like in other areas, we need to address the main task, to upgrade confidence mutually. And today I mentioned to the President Bush here that as regards Iran and some other countries, according to our data, the missile programs of those countries, nuclear programs, are built largely on the basis of the technologies and with the support of the Western companies. We do have such info, and we stand ready to share it with our American partners. So if we pursue it that way, not dealing with generalities, then we'll get results with respect to this very complicated and very important for our two countries track. And the conclusive question, Lucifer, please. Mayak radio station to both presidents. To what degree the new treaty will guarantee the real nuclear parity between Russia and the U.S. in new conditions, and in what conditions? Could you change the mic, please? Could you repeat what you said, Arjun? To what extent the treaty ensures the real nuclear parity, and other conditions that the treaty can be terminated by either side, and how true is the fact that Russia still remains as one of the nuclear targets for nuclear forces, and how does that relate to the announced new strategic relations between our two countries?
First of all, it is a treaty. This document is a treaty that will be confirmed by the United States Senate and Duma, hopefully. Secondly, treaties have always had outs. There's nothing new about that. There's conditions in which things may change and we'll get out of treaties. It's the way it's been. and the ballistic missile treaty had an hour. Nothing new about that. And thirdly, we are going to work to end the forever in the Cold War. It begins with the statement that Russia is our friend, not our enemy. And you say targeting. I mean, the idea of our weaponry, our military has no aims at Russia. There may be old vestiges in place, but Russia's not an enemy. We don't think about how to deal with Russia the way they used to. Russia's a friend, and that's the new thinking. That's part of what's being codified today.
As regards the parity relationship of sorts, the weight of military potentials, nuclear potential, and so on and so forth, each state would have its own strategy of development of what we refer to as nuclear deterrent forces. But I'd like to assure you that all the action undertaken by us in this area fully confirm with the interests of the Russian Federation. The documents signed today are a result of joint effort of the Minister of Defense and General Chiefs of Staff and Chief of Staff and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, of course, jointly with our American colleagues. And we proceed from the assumption that we have today, and we try to forecast the status of affairs in the world for a lengthy period of time. I would like to point it out again for a lengthy perspective. Now, as regards the question of verification and control, perhaps I'd like to point out that we're very much satisfied with the U.S. administration approach to this question. Our American partners have agreed that we need to retain START 1, which is provided for by the system of verification. We agreed we'll continue this work on the basis of the documents signed today as well. And what was the second part of the question, incidentally? The mic is off at this time. Regarding those targets, that was not to me. I will also make a remark here regarding aiming targets. And Mr. Bolevsky, our military first Deputy Chief of Staff, is here with us. He and his American counterpart are full aware of those things, targeting, aims, and other things involved. And what is the status today of those aimings and targetings? All speculations in the press are nothing but expression of domestic political infight, either here or in the U.S., just on the verge of the visit and during it. We are not being emotional here. We're not talking to the press, but as experts, we're full aware of that, and we have no concern whatsoever in this regard. Thank you. Thank you for your kind attention and for your participation.